Metro Police say Cybertruck driver and active duty military operations sergeant Matthew Livelsberger shot himself in the head before the explosion occurred. They also say Livelsberger wrote 2 letters on a phone app. Excerpts were released at a press conference Friday.
Fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves.
Metro also showed another note in which Livelsberger expressed need to, quote, cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Police and the FBI said they do not know why Livelsberger chose Trump International as the location of his attack and said he may have also considered the Grand Canyon.
We have explosive new information today, stuff that I have not yet seen anywhere on the internet, any of the news sources at all, that cast a significant new twist to this story. It contradicts what we are being told. Part of what was in that story there, which I'll get to shortly, about how the former Special Forces soldier Livelsberger allegedly shot himself in the head before he conducted this explosion. I'm going to show you some physical evidence that makes it virtually impossible that actually happened. And I'm sure that no one believes that, or no one expected to have this information put out there. And in fact, you have to use some stop action camera footage to even see it. But when you do, you're going to find it very, very illuminating, shall we say. Let's first of all talk about, though, because there's also been some additional breaking information just in the last 12 hours. Some explosive new information has come out. Now, when we talked about this on our previous show, the only thing that we knew about Livelsberger at the time was being reported that he'd had some sort of domestic issue with his wife, and then no one had any reason to understand why he may have done this, but he drove from Colorado Springs up to Las Vegas and then detonated in front of the Trump Hotel, which didn't seem to make sense on any level, but that's all we had at the time. Well, since then, since our show yesterday, there has been an explosive new report put out by a YouTuber named Sam Shumate, who went on I believe it was the Sean Ryan show, another very influential YouTube show, to share some information. And he put out on X actually last night to kind of to set the stage for this. Gary, if you can put that one up there. He said, look, I'm going to go on the Sam Ryan show, or on the Sam Ryan show, because he's a Sean Ryan show, because he said he had public information. He said he knew that a lot of people would say it was crazy because he got some information that came allegedly from Livelsberger himself the day before the attack happened. And he said at the time he was unsure about what to do about it, what to make about it, and took no action at the time. But once he found out the report that Livelsberger was claimed to be the attacker of the bombing in front of the Trump Hotel, then he felt like he had to go on the air to talk about it. Some very, very interesting things he said. Now, some of the things that he's putting out also contradict the official narrative, which I'll show to you here shortly as well. First of all, I want to look at some of the things that were said in there, and then you can Google that show. It's got millions of views already. But let's take a look at some of the key things that this is what Sam said. The Shumate said on the day that he got this email. This is some of the things that Livelsberger told him, that he was looking for somebody to get the word out. He said in the note that first of all, he was heading to Mexico, not to Las Vegas. He was heading to Mexico, was afraid for his life because he was afraid he was already being tracked. He said he was being digitally tracked by the authorities, which he didn't completely specify, and said that, but he doesn't think they're going to stop him because he has a V-bid. He said that his vehicle is rigged as a V-bid. That's vehicle-borne incendiary explosive device. So basically a car bomb. So he admits in this email, now this is at 10 a.m. on the 31st of December. So what is it? I guess almost an hour a day before the actual explosion took place. And then he said he was heading to Mexico and that he was being followed. He also said he wanted to get the word out because he said one of the reasons he was fleeing is because he had 2 pieces of critical information that he needed to get out and felt that it was vitally important. Number one, he talks about that a lot of these drones we've also been reporting here on the show that have been on the East Coast of the United States and several other places of recent day. He claims that they are Chinese drones. that they had been launched from submarines off the Atlantic and that they had been coming in. He claims that they have a new kind of propulsion system. Now, in it, he uses the word gravitic propulsion system. And the only time that phrase has been used really has been in science fiction movies. Now, I actually sent to Ted Postal, the MIT professor we've had on our show a lot, to ask him if he knew anything about this, what he thought of this claim. And he said he had there were no evidence of anything of any kind of anti-gravity propulsion system, which is what gravitic in the way it's normally used means. Now, obviously, what we don't know is, was that just a title that was used for some kind of new technology that's sort of like, because, there's many times we have technology that's later, that's used in like science fiction movies, Star Trek, and some of these other things that are later turned into reality. And they refer to them in some of those ways, whether this was something like that or whether he was, honestly, we don't know yet. Maybe he made all this up, unknown at this point. So I have to, and let me actually put a caveat at this at the outset. There is so much we don't know, but the things that we do know and some of the things that the official, the FBI and some of the other police agencies are putting out, things just aren't lining up. And when you also look at what some of the friends and colleagues of Livelsberger have been saying, again, things just don't add up. But we also have to caveat it that, suicide is a terrible thing. And sometimes people suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and things they experience in combat, and it has really strange manifestations sometimes. And I've had some personal experience with some of my combat colleagues that some of these things don't manifest until many years later, and then they affect people in different ways. So I can't rule any of that out. And so I'm not saying authoritatively what did happen, but there are some things that I can say authoritatively that didn't happen. And we'll show you that momentarily. One of the key things in here, I'm sorry, I skipped that. There were two things. The Chinese drone things, he's claiming that they were behind this and that word needs to get out because he said that we can't stop this technology. We can't stop what the Chinese are doing. He also claimed we had some kind of unknown drone technology that they also couldn't counter. Didn't go into any detail on that. But he said that he said these things could literally fly over the White House and there's nothing we could do to stop it. So he said we have to be careful because this could launch World War III and it could be mutually assured destruction. Even in the context of his note there, it wasn't clear what he was talking about, and it was a little odd. I'll just have to say I concede that as well. The second thing he said was, though, it seems to have a little bit more credibility, and he said that there was an event in Afghanistan in 2019 in which the United States committed war crimes and killed what he said were hundreds of innocent civilians in Nimroz province. Now, this happens to line up with a UN report at the time that said, yes, there was a U.S. strike, that it did kill a lot of these people, and that it was illegal. And Livelsberger claims that the whole thing was covered up by the DEA, the DOD, and several other agencies within the administration. He said they all covered it up and blocked it from coming out. And he said he was actually part of the cover-up. And so he said apparently he had felt some guilt over that, wanted to come clean. And that leads us to one of the other issues there. In this note that he sent to Shoemate, at no point did he say anything about taking his own life. He said nothing about going to Las Vegas. In fact, the only destination he mentioned was that he had the Cybertruck and that he was trying to get to Mexico. So nothing about committing suicide here, nothing about having, taking his own life, none of that kind of thing. But what he did say was that he was looking to get on Fox News. He was looking to actually go public with what he had. Here's one clip of this Sam Shoemate discussing this on the Sean Ryan Show.
How I responded to him was in a subsequent email. I said, this is obviously a very big deal, but I don't have anything to verify this information with. Talking about gravitic propulsion systems without evidence just makes me another UFO talking head. Like, I'm not going to go on my social media page and start talking about UFOs and anti-gravity systems and everything. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't. And he said, can I get on Fox News Contact on Signal as well as Sean's show? Hegseth would be good too. That was his last message to me.
So you see from that, and then he actually subsequently on his X place there posted some of the screenshots of this, and you see this one here where he says, "Can I get a Fox News contact on Signal as well as Sean's show? Hegseth would be good too." So he was trying to get anyone he could to give the information that he had, because he obviously felt so strongly about it that he could no longer remain silent. Now, if this person, and this has got to be later in the day on 31st of December, if this person was literally hours away from taking his own life, wouldn't he then say something about it? Wouldn't he say, hey, if I don't get hold of these people, then I'm going to go and do this big thing here in front of the Trump hotel in Las Vegas, which by itself wouldn't make any sense at all. If you were wanting to bring some priority to this or some visibility on this subject, this is your golden opportunity. You can say, if I don't get somebody to talk to, then this is the course I'm going to take, because he's apparently hours away from doing it. But he's not. He's talking about maybe fleeing to Mexico, but wanting to talk to somebody important. Now, as he said on the show there, that was his last communication with Libbelsberger. He got nothing further. And all of a sudden, the next time he hears his name is when he sees the news about what happened in Las Vegas. And so we have to ask the questions here. What would have prompted someone to be saying those things at that time, but to also have apparently made all of the plans and preparations that were necessary to launch this attack, and not said anything about it in that conversation right there? Now, by itself, that doesn't prove anything, because he could have. If someone is in the state of mind to do something like that, you can't say, well, they're acting completely coherent and rational. One of the things, in fact, that he says also in the main email was, he says, they are definitely tracking me with digital capabilities, and I have my phone with me. And of course, one of the first things you're thinking is somebody from this caliber, you're thinking, now hang on, if you know that they're tracking you with your phone, and obviously the authorities can track anyone from their phone, it's one of the capabilities we have, then why would you keep it with you? If you're trying to get away to Mexico, it doesn't seem reasonable that you're going to send an email that tells people where you're going and keep your phone with you. But that's what the thing said. So that's one of the other things that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense why he would have done that. That's what was in the note. But let's take a look at how the media. So that was last night. That came out last night. My brother actually sent me that. I hadn't seen it up to that point, late last night. And so, of course, this is just blowing up all over X, all over for certain parts of the internet. But how has the media been playing about it? Well, here's what I've seen so far. Here, in fact, is the Washington Post. They're talking about, well, he struggled with mental health, investigators say. So now all of a sudden we find out that at least what's being reported in some outlets is that he was struggling with mental health recently. Now that seems really curious to me, that the Army, anyone who has access to medical records, and this is what's being claimed by officials, anonymity, are going to tell people what was going on with the guy mental health wise. That's like a big, huge taboo, that you don't tell people about mental health, any kind of medical issues. There's HIPAA rules for that kind of thing. You don't release that. But now here, all of a sudden, they're releasing not to investigators, but to the media. It says, oh yeah, he had some mental health problems because he was struggling with PTSD. He was struggling with, the things that he had seen and done in combat, et cetera. And he'd been apparently seeking help. And then now they're going to tell people this right away. So that's kind of a red flag to me, why they would do that right away. Then you have the FBI reporting that, yes, this was a really sad suicide situation. In fact, what they're saying is the soldier who died in the Cybertruck explosion left a note saying it was a wake-up call for the country's ills. And then it says, although the incident is more public and more sensational as usual, it ultimately appears to be a tragic case of suicide involving a heavily decorated combat veteran who was struggling with PTSD and other issues, FBI agent in charge said. And so now then you're already starting to create this narrative. Yeah, he was an American hero. Surely he was. He was an active duty special forces troop that had 19 years experience, extensive experience. I think I saw he had 4, maybe it was 5 Bronze Star medals, one of which for valor, meaning that this guy was on top of his game here. When I have read a number of reports from people who have been interviewing some of his colleagues, some of his former soldiers, And they all uniformly said that he was like Captain America, that he was this great American, would never commit suicide, was not that kind of person, apparently never confided to any of these people, his brothers in arms, that he was suicidal, that he was even contemplating that, or that he would take this kind of action, this kind of, blow it up in front of everybody action here. But the FBI claims, now here's an interesting thing. Now, I just pointed out to you that on this thing that hours before, important here, hours before the event happened, that he sent several communication text messages and emails to Sam Shoemate, didn't say anything about any kind of a terrorist attack, didn't say anything about any kind of suicide by car, VBIT, etc. Now then, the FBI, though, claims that they found his phone, that it was usable, and that he left notes saying that it was a wake-up call. And that yes, actually, we got on his phone these new suicide notes. So we're being asked to believe that when he did reach out to people, when he did talk to certain folks, that he didn't say anything. He didn't tell anyone that he was thinking about. There was also some notes with an ex-girlfriend that he had shared back and forth with in a playful sort of way just days before. That's the Gary's showing it right there. That's one of his ex-girlfriends. And according to that, it was all lighthearted. It was just fun stuff, apparently normal stuff, and no mention of anything at all. No mental health problems. No, I'm thinking about doing this terrible thing. None of those things. Not even the issues that he raised in that email to Shoemate. When they were interviewing the ex-girlfriend afterwards, she made mention of a lot of difficulties he had earlier in his career. I think around the 2018, 2019 timeframe when some of these war crimes were alleged to have taken place. And during that time, he said he was struggling with it. Said he had, a lot of agony and difficulty and PTSD type symptoms over what had happened and all the things he had done in his career, et cetera, and that he was depressed sometimes, et cetera. That's in 2018, 2019. No more since that time. And then they stopped contact in 2021. He ends up getting married to somebody else, has a new baby, et cetera. So we went on a complete life. And then he reaches out to her out of nowhere. And says these normal, playful things, which she said she was glad to hear from him, but thought it was a little unusual as well. But so someone that he had previously confided in, he says nothing. His colleagues in uniform, and I know because I have a little bit of experience dealing with special forces folks. I went on a couple of missions with special forces in my Afghanistan tour during 2011. The 2010 and 2011, and they are a very, very tight-knit group, and they don't talk a lot outside their group, and they don't share things that much outside the group, but inside it's like a very tight-knit family. And at least what's been reported so far, none of those people have said he said a word to any of these problems, these alleged mental health problems about, etc. So now then what we're being told is that he shot himself. Is that he took his own life in front of the hotel here and did this big boisterous thing. And then they find these notes, not of anybody else, on his phone. And you just have to wonder. I think Gary's already shown a couple of images of the truck blowing up. But you see that it was a very high intensity fire. And apparently everything inside had just been completely evaporated. Not only was a lot of things blown up in the initial blast, but then the entire inside was consumed with fire. And in fact, one of the images I have seen is you see that right there. And so somehow we're led to believe that the phone survived intact so that they could get messages off of it. And in these messages on his phone, not that he sent to someone else, at least what's been reported, these were notes that he made on his phone. And that he said, this was me just trying to strike back and get rid of the demons that I have built up over the years. And, it's a wake up call and all this kind of stuff. And you just got to think that's really convenient, and how interesting that he shared with nobody. And even though he's reaching out, trying to go to Fox News, trying to go to the incoming Secretary of Defense, talking to an ex-girlfriend, mentions none of those things. But then on his own phone, he leaves a suicide note, like as though that's going to be found somewhere. So that's just another red flag, another big red flag. But listen, I want to zero in on this issue that he shot himself in the head, because what's being claimed is that he drove up, the vehicle drove up, got in front of the hotel, where that place you've seen. He pulled out a pistol that he had bought on Monday, accordingly, legally, they said, and it was called a Desert Eagle 50 caliber weapon. Now, if you don't know anything about a 50 caliber weapon, Gary's going to show this picture on the screen here. This is a slow motion view of a 50 caliber pistol. This is as far as I'm aware, this is the largest caliber pistol that's on the market that you can buy. And you see, this is what it does when it goes through several things. That the kinetic energy of that round, if this was fired at his head, that's what would have happened to his head. It would have literally been vaporized. It is an enormously large bullet with tremendous kinetic power. If this had happened prior to being detonated, then you would have seen in the videos, you would have seen a big blast. You would have seen the flash of the muzzle, and that bullet would, I assure you, would not be contained within the vehicle. No, whatever direction it went, the bullet would have passed out of the vehicle. And then you also have to ask the other obvious question. If he just shot himself, then how did he subsequently detonate the vehicle? Now, you can say, well, he had a timer. Maybe he had a timer, with a delay, he hit that and then fired. That's theoretically possible. Certainly it is. But there's no evidence that he used a timer. There's no evidence. In fact, they haven't talked at all about that. So that's one thing that we should zero in on, and we should take a look. And you've already seen some of these pictures where they laid out all the charred remains of all this stuff. You saw he also had a rifle. There were two weapons. One was the Desert Eagle 50 caliber pistol, which allegedly was in the front seat, which is what he allegedly used to shoot himself with. Then there's also a kind of an AR style weapon. And that they showed, at least I've seen one picture of that, and it's very charred, almost melted in some places. It's just really badly damaged. But his phone survived. His phone continued to be able to be so good that they could pull the chip off and open it up in it. And how did they get it to? Nearly everybody these days has password protected anyway. It's just hard for me to imagine that phone would have been recoverable immediately. And then these images come out of what he took on there. Now, we'll have to wait and see on that too. This is all evolving. So let me caveat this. Perhaps they'll say later on that, oh, well, no, actually he sent that text message to X, Y, and Z and we pulled it off the internet, or we pulled it off the cloud or something like that. So I'll leave some room that that's possible, but at least what's been reported so far is very, very suspect. But now I'm going to drill into one of the parts that I think that completely obliterates this claim that he shot himself and then detonated. Now, there is one angle of this. That's it right there. Yeah. Now you tell me a brand new weapon is going to get charred to that degree that Gary's showing there, but his phone is easily able to pull off text messages. Well, you can make your own choices there, or your own decisions there. And then his ID card is just a little bit melted. His passport, which was in there, almost completely untouched. So hard to reconcile those things, the evidence that we're being told is the case here when you see the other. But we'll leave that there. That's questionable. This part, however, is not questionable. Now, this is the explosion. If you can back that up. Okay, here's the explosion from this certain angle. This is one of the most important piece of evidences that's out there. This is from the side, and you can see this is from the driver's side. Most of these others you've seen from various different angles. Now, if you look very close, freeze that right there for Gary. Freeze that right at that point. Just about there. Freeze. Now, if from this video here, you can see this is the driver's side. Now, if you look carefully into the window, you can see where the driver's head is. You can see his hair, his face, his shoulders, the back of the chair, all that stuff you can see. Now, I have taken some screenshots out of this, and let me show you a series of them. Gary, if you can put that first one up there. This is the first image I'm going to show you here is pulled off that video, and it's right before the explosion happens. And so if you look carefully in there, and now go to the second one there, you can see clearly that there's his head. His shoulder is right there where that arrow is pointing, and then you can see kind of perpendicular the seat back. So this shows a person normally sitting in a vehicle from the angle you would expect. Then go to the next picture. Now, this is the instant of the explosion. This is where things start to go sideways. In this picture right here, you can see that the explosion starts in the passenger seat, or in the driver's seat. So this must have initiated right underneath him. It didn't initiate in the back where allegedly there was some gas canisters and lots of fireworks, etc. It initiated right there in the front seat. So let's take a look there and now go to the next image here. Let me show you what you can see very clearly now. You can definitely see his face is illuminated very clearly. You can see his ear there right at the end of that arrow, his face, his nose, his hairline. You can see all that. You can see the steering wheel, obviously very well illuminated in that. The next clip there, Gary, if you can go to the next one. Yeah. So you can see that is clear as can be. It's like with this light going on. This is right before, as the explosion happens. Do you see any evidence that this person had already been killed, had already been dead? If he had shot himself with the weapon that they claim was in the front seat, there would be no head. I'm sorry to be graphic, but there would be no head on the body. It would have been vaporized. You would have seen exiting the vehicle, the bullet. It would have come out there. It's impossible with that much power. It could have been contained within the vehicle. It would have penetrated the vehicle and gone out after it went through his head. But you see none of that here. And then the next video, I think there's one more, isn't there, Gary? Or is that the last one? That may be the last one. Yeah, because then you have this huge explosion. But that's what would have happened. But now then here we have this image, and Gary, go back to the last image that we had on there. This proves 100% clearly that this person was not dead before the explosion. That because even if it was a regular weapon and he just killed himself, then obviously he would have been slumped forward. His head would have been on the wheel. You can't stay upright after you've shot yourself. It's physically impossible. So now then that leaves us with, what has happened now? What's going to go on? What's going to the result of this point? Because if what we're being told over and over is he shot himself, and yet here very clearly he didn't, then what are we to make of what else we're being told? Now, another one here, this comment also from an FBI when they're talking about the nature of the explosion itself. Watch this.
I'll tell you, it does appear that it was, I just want to be careful with my language here, but the level of sophistication is not what we would expect from an individual with this type of military experience. That most of the materials inside that Tesla were fuel to help fuel a greater explosion. But it's too early to answer any question as if there was sophisticated connectivity to those components to make it ignite in the way that it did.
So you see there that here's an explosive expert saying, it just seems a little odd that this guy who was a 19-year Special Forces veteran, who had been through multiple Afghan deployments and apparently several other operational deployments elsewhere, knew explosives inside and out, was really good at his craft, would not even know how to put together an effective vehicle-borne explosive device. Why would that be? Why would he not be able to do that? And then like all these things in the back, this fireworks and all this other kind of stuff, they weren't even connected. But then allegedly, what these folks are expecting you to believe is that even though it was really unsophisticated, apparently he must have had a really sophisticated triggering mechanism so that he could shoot himself and have set the timer off so that it would go off after he was dead. And then that's another thing you got to look at that. Going back to that video or that picture there, if you have set an explosive device in the front seat of your vehicle, that one right there. So that's where it is. Now, tell me, what possible reason would you have to say, hey, before this bomb goes off in my lap, I'm going to shoot myself first? There's no reason to do that. There's no need to do that. You're going to be evaporated when that bomb goes off. So it seems kind of odd that you would, quote, shoot yourself first and then the bomb goes off. So you see, none of this stuff matches up with this guy. He says he's trying to get to Mexico. He says he has some explosive information he wants to get into the media. Then all of a sudden he kills himself and allegedly shoots himself and blows himself up inside of a vehicle that he knows good and well is very powerfully put together so that if you have an explosive device, that it's most of it is going to be contained within that vehicle. I think there's some famous footage out there. I think it was Elon Musk himself when he announced this thing, threw like an iron ball or something like that at the glass window. It was supposed to have bounced off. It cracked, but it showed how strong this vehicle was, and it's something that can really contain a lot of explosive power. So if you know a lot about making explosives, if you know about how to make a vehicle bomb, and then you're going to use a small amount of explosive, which will mostly be contained because allegedly, according to the official story here, is that he didn't want to commit terrorism. He didn't want to kill anybody. He just wanted to make a message. Well, obviously, you could have done that anywhere. And why go to the Trump hotel? I mean, he's a Trump supporter. By all accounts, this guy was positive to Trump support. So if you just want notoriety, why would you drive from Colorado all the way to Las Vegas to get in front of this hotel? I mean, you just say none of this stuff makes any sense at all. And yet that's what we're asking for. But you look at all of the media. The media today, are they saying anything about whatever allegedly happened in 2019? Are they talking about anything about these drones? Are we doing any more investigations into them? They're not talking about any of that stuff. They're just saying he definitely committed suicide. He definitely had emotional issues, and trust us on this. We got this stuff off his phone, even though he didn't send it to anyone else or talk to anyone else in his sphere. But he left this neutral note in a place that shouldn't have even been able to be discovered. So what's wrong with that story? You see what I'm saying here? Listen, our government has done so many things that has caused a lot of doubt and a lot of questions about things, and we don't know. There's too many things, I'm sorry, that we do know that turned out to be not true later on. So there's been poll after poll for many years now that shows that America's trust in government keeps going down, down, down. And some of these things are the reason why. Now, as I said, and I'm sorry to beat this dead horse, but I just have to be clear that we're barely, two days into this. So there's so much we don't know, and a lot of this is swirling around. But folks, listen, when the officials are emphatically telling you he shot himself with a huge caliber pistol that they recovered, and then you see with your own eyes, there he is, plain as day, not shot before that thing goes off. Then you have to say, what else are y'all not telling us? What else are you telling us that isn't true? I mean, that shot right there is the money shot. You can't get past that. It is as illuminated as it could be. There is the driver. He is fully upright. He has not been shot. His head is still on his shoulders. So, and I believe I've seen some reports that also say, well, because it was this is what they claim happened to him, that now there's no dental records. They can't do that kind of analysis. But you see on the picture there, you can't get away from it. That is a fact that his head was still intact and it had not been shot. So that's something that's going to have to be answered. And I'm going to be looking to get any kind of information on that. I do ask you, more than I ordinarily do, share this video. Even take some screenshots of this yourself. Send them out there. I'm going to be tweeting this out myself because these are some questions that must be asked. And I'll be real interested to hear how these are reconciled with what you're claiming, what you're telling me is information, with what we can see with our own eyes. We'll have to keep following this. Listen, that's all that we have for you today. We're going to continue to follow this. And if we get any more information like this, we'll certainly share it with you. But I'll just tell you that some of this stuff is disturbing to me. And, let's not just focus on what the media is telling us here, but let's look at what he did say, that we have an authoritative answer, that he did bring up a couple of issues. Those deserve some focus as well. And I'd like to see the media focus on those too, to find out, is this true? Did we commit a war crime in 2019 and cover it up? And if so, who did it? Don't let this be another one of those things where we find out some information of something that was done illegally and we violated our own laws, and then no one suffered any consequences. And now then they've continued to go on to to lucrative positions or whatever. If somebody did that, we need an investigation. We need to find out, and we need to hold them accountable. And if there is something else going on with this, with these drone issues, whether there's some kind of new technology or whether it's the Chinese using something else or whether it's not, we need to find out. That's something that Americans need to know about. We deserve to know about that. And we're going to continue following this so that you do know. Folks, we are unintimidated and uncompromised. We will tell you the truth. whatever we know at the time. And if future evidence comes out that contradicts any of these suppositions, we'll bring that to you as well, because you deserve the truth. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Just a kind of a quick reminder here. We're going to have a great show on Monday. We have Aidan Minnis back on the show. He is a former British citizen who has joined the Russian army, and he's going to give the view from the Russian side of what's happening on some of the on the Eastern Front there. We hear a lot about what's happening on the Ukraine side, but the Western media almost never tells anything about the other side. So that you can understand a balanced view of what's happening, we're going to show the other side on Monday. Be sure and tune in then, and we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.